Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. And we're delighted you're with us today. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Nate is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Captain John Regan's with us. Welcome, Captain John Regan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, John. I did something that really surprised me. You've been to the farm and you know that I have these fluorescent lights that I use, and these 4-footers, these shop lights. You can buy them for, I don't know, maybe they're $15 a piece now. And when I bought them, they were about $10. I bought them at Home Depot many, many years ago. Well, about 8 years ago. And I use them for lighting all kinds of things in the barn, in the shop, when I work on cars. And so I have a bunch of them, about 10 of them. And the ballasts started failing, one after the next, and pretty soon I only have 2 left, 2 that work. So what I did was I went to eBay and I thought, I'll be able to buy a better ballast, not a new one, an unused, new old stock, if you will, a better ballast made by a USA company, because I took these apart and they're all made in China. They're these cheap, cheesy ballasts. So I found some made by General Electric that were a lot of them, meaning more than one. I think I got about 6 or 8 of them. And they were old stock. I thought, this is great. And I looked to see, are they made in China? Couldn't find anything that said made in China, looking at all the pictures. Yesterday I installed one of them, and it's made by it's got General Electric on the label. Looks better. Made in China. It's pretty frustrating. It's kind of hard to buy something that is in the electronic aisle that's not made in China, John. It's really frustrating. And our landfills are becoming filled with all this Chinese junk and that we throw away because it's not good enough to keep. It's not good enough to have around. There's no salvage value in it. So we throw them out individually. They're filling up our landfills. The Chinese have our debt. And then what are they doing? They are taking our debt and they're buying our companies and our resources and our assets with our debt. And our landfills are becoming filled up. It's an outrage. It's an outrage. So that's just one thing I wanted to share with us, that we're filling up our landfills and they're buying our companies as a result. And our land and our businesses and our real estate and our timber, and it goes on and on and on, and our resources. What do you think?
Well, we may not have to worry about that much longer, the way things are going with Russia. I don't think I've seen anything like this since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And good luck on finding information about it in the mainstream media.
That's another thing. The mainstream media. I met a guy over the weekend. He's a farmer. He's 66 years old. And I was talking to him because he's selling his farm equipment. And he's selling it because it's absolutely positively impossible for him with, I think he had about 400 or more acres. And he can't make a go of it can't make it go financially with raising cows. And so he had some old equipment. He had a piece of, relatively nice, one piece of new equipment. But all of his equipment was, except for this one piece of a new baler that he had, relatively new, maybe 10 years old. Everything else was really old, from the 70s. And so it's not like he wasted money, buying new equipment from the dealers and then finding out that he couldn't pay for it. He was very thrifty, very thrifty. So thrifty that he does what we do. He takes used engine oil and he keeps it in jugs after he drains the crankcase and then uses that in his lubricating guns for oiling. Like if he wants to oil chains and parts, he uses this used oil that's settled for months and months and months, just like we do. So it's not wasting money, but he can't make a go of it. And so we were talking, and he said, no, he doesn't use the internet at all. And so I said, so who are you going to vote for? He said, Hillary. Probably Hillary. And I thought, how's that possible? With all the things that are going on, all the things that we're discussing, how is it possible that anybody in their right mind would vote for Hillary? Unless they've been, bribed, threatened, coerced somehow, or they're ill-informed. And I'm thinking that, boy, I wonder how many people are like that. Nice guy, wonderful man. It's just not informed. And it's kind of sad. Actually, it's very sad. It's frightening that people would. How could anybody be swayed? Just watching her, even on the big screen, watching her fake smile, watching her actions, watching her body language. How could anybody be fooled by that? Amazing, terrifying. What do you think?
We used to have Democrats believing that FDR did America a favor.
Absolutely, I know one. Yep. And we've been sold out by these politicians for a very long time. And then the current media is saying, the nerve of Donald Trump, the nerve of him saying that he will not abide by the reported election or selection results. He'll let us all know at that time whether he's going to abide by it. We have a history. Our country has a history of not agreeing with election results or selection results. So why would we start now? But the mainstream media is acting like it's a sacrilege to not agree with the selection reported results, right?
It's funny, the Democrats didn't agree with the results in 2000, and the media was full for that.
Right. So I was in the shower this morning, and the water's low volume, high pressure, and there's this white noise, this kind of a sound, and I'm able to think, without distractions. And so I was thinking about the mainstream media and how we have been lied to. So we get a guy like Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather, or one of those guys in front of us, and we think everything's okay because, they're going to tell us the truth. I'm not convinced of any of that anymore. I'm convinced that there's an agenda, there's manipulation, there's deception, there's obfuscation. They're confusing us on purpose, and they're doing it. They're doing the bidding of corporations. So I don't believe anything I see on television. And then there's another component to this, John, and that is, there's the mainstream media, the dinosaur media, and then there's, the alternative media. That'd be guys like us. And I have a feeling, and we've been talking about this for many, many years. We talked about the meetups many times. We talked about there'll be a time when it'll be every man and woman for him, himself or herself, as the dollars become more scarce, as jobs become more scarce, as people become more hungry. And we're starting to see more of that every day. I'm talking about lying to sell things. I was watching a YouTube video. Mercedes Source is the channel. The guy's great. His name is Kent. He talks about how to repair a Mercedes. He does an excellent job talking about and showing how to fix Mercedes. And he talked about he has a series, 10 a 10 video series on how to buy a 10 to 15-year-old Mercedes. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is that when you go to Craigslist and you talk to someone, they lie. They lie to you. The pictures don't represent what they're actually selling, and the words that they use are used to mislead you, thinking that. So you go out and look at this because they figure if you're going out to look at the vehicle that or the piece of equipment that once they get you there, they're going to sell it to you. So they've got to convince you to show up. So they mislead you, and he's talking about that. And is it true? Have I found that? Absolutely true. It's absolutely true. People lie. They forget. You ask them about rust. Oh, no, there's no rust. Until you get there. Then there's plenty of rust. How could you miss the rust? Does it leak? Oh, no, it doesn't have any leaks. Really? What about these 3 puddles underneath the vehicle? Has it been an accident? Just a little fender bender. And you realize that, no, it's been way, way more than that. How's the glass? Glass is pretty good. Is that a broken window I see in that picture on the third picture is that a broken window? Oh, yeah, that's just that's a small window. I thought you said the glass was okay. Well, it is. You just reminded me. Yeah, it does have a broken window. Those kinds of things. And typically when you're looking for a piece of equipment, it's easily 1 hour each way. And if it's farm equipment, it's bringing a trailer with a heavy truck 1 hour each way. That's minimum. But that's not typical for me. Typical for me is driving 1,000 miles each way. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the lies. I'm sick of the deception. And I'm seeing more of it every day. And I don't like it. And that's where our country's gone. Because we have people at the top who practice until they get it perfect how to lie. What do you think?
I don't think Hillary has to practice at all. I think it comes naturally.
Well, I'm talking about the people trying to catch up to her. She's an intergalactic disgrace. She's right up there with Barry. Gosh, I can't stand to look at her. I can't stand to hear her voice. I can't believe a word she says. How can by the way, during the alleged debates, Donald Trump talked about her lying. I didn't hear once her say, "Now, Donald, that's not true. I don't lie." I didn't hear her say that. I didn't hear her say, "No, those aren't lies." I haven't heard her even address the fact that we all know that she's lying, and Donald Trump called her out on it. Have you heard her address the lies, saying, "No, it's not true"?
Not at all.
No. See, there you go. Hey, we'll be right back. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com, and we've got a new website for you to go to, and we'll tell you about that. I'll tell you right now, EZE33. Captain John Regan's with us, and John, we're at your new website, EZE33.org. Where would you like to begin? Or do you have some comments for us?
Well, some comments. One, I've got the conference pricing on my products that I'm keeping through November 7th to give everybody a chance to jump into those prices. I do have a limited number of signed books that's being offered in combination with the USB thumb drive for $50. The drive itself is, is on special for $40. And I would say just the 2 hours of the Unprepared Prepper, which is part 4 of the Cost of Ignoring God video series on the sick, is worth it all by itself. What I'm working on doing is trying to get the financial State of the Union more back to the objective financial picture that it started out being, and everything else that we've added since, move that more under the ministry website there. Plus, EZE33.org is a whole lot shorter and easier to type in. Stands for Ezekiel 33, which starts out talking about the physical watchman on the wall. And when you go to that site, it'll have the news tab there, so you can just click on that and you'll get quickly to where the articles are that we're talking about. And I just want to quickly add that I'm going to be on the air this afternoon with Tim Cox out of Nashville. And I'll get a post up on this. He's got a couple of websites that will get there, truthradio.tv and cnkshow.com. And that's from 4:30 to 5:30 Central Time this afternoon. So that should be fun, too. And I'll also get a link as soon as it's posted. I had an hour with Lynn Leoz. She did a half-hour interview with me before the conference, and that has garnered over 100,000 views on YouTube. So the good news is we are starting to get the message out to more people. I spent an hour with her this weekend, and one of the things I included was the Day of Humiliation declaration that Lincoln did during the Civil War. So if you miss that, this will be another opportunity to listen and just see how far this country has fallen in just 150 years. You know, the politicians, we kind of expect won't say anything like it. And sadly, we don't hear anything out of the pulpit either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we haven't heard much out of Barry in weeks, have we?
Well, before we run out of time this segment, let's run down to the bottom of the list, government smarts. And when I lived in Houston, which left there in 99, so it's been a while, Sheila Jackson Lee was my non-representative in Congress. And it's kind of embarrassing. Back when we had the first Mars rover, she was out at the JPL lab and was asking, how far is that from the Apollo landing site? And from what I understand, the people there managed to not laugh, but she doesn't even know the difference between the moon and Mars. So she's upset about all these leaked emails. So she denounces Wikipedia for the leaks when, in fact, it was WikiLeaks. What can you do? This is among the best and brightest that the Democrat Party has to offer. And
I'm looking at her picture, and she has this flower on her shoulder. I think it's a flower. It's this lime green looking thing. This thing is 2/3 the size of her head. I mean, who wears a flower that big? I'm talking about this flower is the size of a small baseball mitt. Oh, boy. I guess I shouldn't say things about the way people dress and the way they look, but boy, it's hard not to. Captain John Reagan's with us. We'll be back right after these bottom of the hour commercial announcements. Captain John Reagan's with us. John, I was talking with Miles this morning, and we were talking about what he mentioned to us about a week ago. And that was that interest rates for saving will be falling, and inflation will be rising. And over the weekend, I read an article confirming that in the mainstream. So, it's happening. It's happening. We knew it would happen. We said it would happen, and here it is. And I'm noticing the price of everything seems to be increasing, and it's getting tougher and tougher for everybody except the masters. The masters seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, and we'll cover some of the financial news very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
To end the government smart section. We've been watching the destruction of Europe with the Muslim invasion, and it's gone to an insane level, and I really believe we are witnessing the death of Sweden. And the link I have, it's okay to hate everybody. And Sweden rules that flying the ISIS flag is not a hate crime because the terror group shows contempt for everyone rather than specific groups.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes you wonder, what are these people thinking?
Well, it's not all of them. It's just a few of them that are making decisions for the rest of us. And there's so many people, John, that I'm meeting who are just absolutely, positively fed up. And depending on how the election goes, there may be violent outbreaks as a result of a stolen election. And people are really, really upset. And, I think more people from outside our country are watching this selection process that we're going through than ever before. I think they're worried as well.
Now, looking at the financial section, there's the other why it can't get better. And the articles from Zero Hedge, the game is up, why exporters are in double trouble. And this gets into demographics. And why that's so important is because you can't just turn around demographics. Who is living now, their offspring, all of that goes into very, very long-term trends that cannot easily be changed. And we're looking at, there's a chart showing some of the peaks. We see where 89, the Japanese population turns negative. 97, the German population turns negative. In 2012, the EU population turns negative. And in 2017, the Chinese population turns negative. And that just cuts down on consumption, which basically means everybody that's exporting now has less to export to, as well as what you do produce in country, you've got less consumption there. So it's a double whammy. And again, it's one of those things that's not easily fixed because you can't just turn around and create people. Of course, they're working on trying to do that in the lab, but don't think the artificial bodies require as much consumption as natural ones do.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on along, freight continues to weaken. We look at the freight index, which is the chart in here, and with the exception of February, and we also tied in July. 2016 has been the worst year going back to 2011. So if you think back about how wonderful things have been, and shipments are even lower than that, it's just another indication. In September is well below other months. In fact, when you look at some of the years, a lot of them peaked in September, basically getting ready for the Christmas rush before they turned down. And when you look at the last few months of the year, in every case, you have a downturn in shipping. It's just a seasonal thing. So from where we are now in September, it's going to be interesting to see how low this will go by the end of the year.
John, I'm looking at the chart right now, and it shows that shipping has remained virtually flat. June, July, August, September, virtually flat. And there is no peak. As you said, there is no peak for the Christmas rush. And I have a feeling that even though I'm seeing Christmas items in stores already, and have for weeks. I've seen Christmas items, even though they're getting ready. I don't see the Christmas spirit. I don't even see anybody talking about Christmas. Do you?
I sure haven't.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a much more somber mood this Christmas than probably any Christmas in my life. I really feel that way. And I can't explain it. It just doesn't feel right. John, the amount of threats, the amount of bad things that are happening just doesn't make for people to feel good about much at all. It really doesn't. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much debt. There's so much poverty. There's so many people who are hurting. It's hard to feel good about our country, the United States. It really is hard. I see it virtually in everybody I talk to. No one has a positive outlook on where we're headed. No one. Not one person. Can you think of one person that says, this is great. In a couple of months, everything's going to be great. Have you seen one person, with a really good positive attitude about the overall picture that we find ourselves in? Have you seen one person?
Not in the news I've come across.
That's what I mean. Okay. What's next?
Well, the good news is Social Security recipients are going to be getting an increase for 2017. But I wouldn't celebrate too much just yet. It's a 0.3%. So that means that the average check will rise $5 a month. But don't get too excited about that extra $5 because Medicare premiums went up even more than that. Fortunately, because of the way the law is written, only that $5 will be going towards the increased premiums for people already on Social Security. If you're just now getting in, you're going to have to pay the increased Medicare. So it's I don't see how you can take this any other way but a sign of just how bad things are and just how government's not really out of touch. They're screwing the Social Security people on purpose. The adjustment they use doesn't take into account things like rent, which a lot of Social Security recipients are paying rent, and rent is going up. It's just sad to see that we haven't had a rebellion over this, and the Democrats still have so many people in control.
John, I'm reading about domestic shipping prices. That'd be the United States Postal Service. It says Priority Mail will see an average rate increase of 15.6% in 2016. After 3 years without a shipping rate increase, Priority Mail will increase 9.4% in 2016. Let's see. First class package service will see a rate increase of 12.8% in 2016. So, if that's the case, will the Social Security increase cover the additional cost of just shipping or mailing that the average person sees? Doesn't seem like it, does it?
No, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, I don't want it to sound like I'm implying that the Republicans are the answer to our problems, because they're not. It's just with the election upcoming, they're the least damaging option that we really have available to us.
Are you seeing large postcards? I mean, huge postcards arriving in your mail that are negative, telling you why the other candidate should not be selected. Have you seen that kind of stuff? Because we have it here.
Yeah, I've been seeing the oversized postcards. I haven't even bothered reading them.
Mm-hmm. Well, what some of them are saying that we're receiving here at our farm is, how bad this guy is that's running and why you should not be part of the selection of that person. I've never seen anything like that before. Normally we see, here are the 7 reasons or 5 reasons why you should get behind one candidate or another. No, not this time. This time it's kind of like the alleged debates where the candidates take shots at each other. I guess they're all so bad that they just want to point out some of the bad. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan is with us. EZE33.org. I'd like to go to the website. John?
And that also makes it easier if you want to email me. It's John at EZE33.org. Whole lot easier than trying to type in that financialstateoftheunion.com mile-long address.
Yeah.
So with the time we have left this hour, I'd like to hit employment and control. In the employment section, it's guess who got fired? Times are tough for everybody. Well, Snoopy's now in the doghouse. MetLife has dropped Snoopy as their mascot. And in more disturbing news, the real Obama legacy. They've counted the number of pages in regulations that Obama has issued. And in a count from the Federal Register, he's issued over 28,000 new final rules that are over 200,000 pages in the Federal Register. That's the equivalent of 167 Bibles, which average about 1,200 pages each. And that doesn't count what prior presidents have done. And of course, we're expected to know and abide by these regulations. If that doesn't count as tyranny, I don't know what does.
John, there's no way that anyone can figure out what the ordinances, the rules, the regulations, the laws are. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. And you've talked about this in the past. You've mentioned that we're all breaking laws just in the course of our daily activities. Not that we want to, it's just there are laws against things that we don't even know about, don't even make any sense. You're right.
And that's probably one of the reasons why we're all going to have those personal assistants that have the artificial intelligence built in, because these AIs can handle understanding all these thousands and thousands of laws and regulations. So if the AI understands everything that you're doing, it can advise you on what you should and shouldn't do.
John, so what happens if it's like a Microsoft Windows operating environment and the AI needs to be rebooted? What happens? Do we just do nothing? I mean, this is crazy. I'm thinking about, I was watching a video about car repairs, and there was this thought that, the new cars are so complicated that we can't repair them. So just give up. There's, if you have an oil change and a look over at a Mercedes dealership, if you have a Mercedes, relatively new one, you're looking at, it could be $800. $800. If you want your spark plugs changed, it could be $1,000 to change spark plugs, which used to be a 1-hour job, on a Saturday, back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. A 1-hour job, maybe even the 90s. Now we've gotten so complicated. I don't really like it. I really don't. And maybe this internet outage that we had over the last couple of days, Gwyneth Isaacs called me from Australia yesterday, and she said that they had an internet outage there. And, maybe these kinds of things will make our lives a little more simple, so that we don't have to keep checking the news like every hour or two, and our lives are consumed by who said what to whom on Facebook. I mean, we've really been consumed and derailed from real important activities by just media. And then if you add to that what young people are leaning toward, and that is experiences. They're leaning toward experiences. They'd rather have experiences than assets. They'd rather put their money into experiences rather than invest their money into assets that will carry them in the long run. Makes no sense to me. Absolutely makes no sense. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Captain John Regan's with us. And class, if you're thinking about topping off your firearms and ammunition equipment, you might want to go to the RK shows coming up on October 29 and 30. Louisville, Kentucky. Knoxville, Tennessee. Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Lawrenceville, Georgia. And you can go to rkshows.com, rkshows.com, and you can look at the show calendar and go to the show nearest you. Top off your supplies. And you might want to consider this a pre-selection opportunity before prices increase should Hillary take the White House. John Regan?
Well, for those just joining us, to get to the news tab, we got a little bit easier way of getting there. If you go to eze33.org, that stands for Ezekiel 33, and click the news tab, that'll get you to where we are. And if you've been listening live and already have the page pulled up, click the news tab again or hit refresh on your browser, because I had to correct one of the links that we're getting ready to talk about. Be moving to the bigger picture section.
John, did you hear about this Alabama-Texas A&M game where the 100,000 plus fans attending the game were told that water pressure is low and don't use the bathroom? Have you heard that?
I saw the headline, enjoy those beers, but you got to hold it.
Can you imagine the chaos that just from having low water pressure at a stadium where, everyone wants to use the restroom. Gosh. I try really hard to make sure I'm not in a situation where I'm dependent on others, if you will, for anything, really. And I'm always looking for a way out. On the way in, I'm looking for a way out. When I'm there, I'm looking for, an escape route. I'm looking all around thinking, if something bad happens, and, I even think about what could happen and where would I go. So I'm always paying attention to the situation. And when I travel, the same thing. I'm always looking for the guy in front of me doing the dumbest possible thing, and what am I going to do about it? And so I try to prepare as I go through life for these situations that I would regret. So I try to minimize my maximum regret by preparing. But can you imagine going to a stadium, having very few exits, and 100,000 people all having to pee and can't? Wow. Gosh. So I'm just not going to be involved in those situations. Okay, John, back to you. Well,
Sheila Jackson Lee won't be able to blame Wikipedia on this leak. At the top of the bigger picture, latest Hillary leak. Apparently during the debate, Hillary let slip some very highly classified information, and that's the amount of time that it takes to go from a launch to an American response using the nuclear codes. And I got to thinking about it, and no, I didn't even know this. It's a very small number of people. In fact, the list includes the president, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Attorney General, the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA Director, the Deputy Secretary of State, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and special personnel designated solely by the President in writing. So to let it slip, it is a really, really big deal. She ought to be incarcerated now and removed from consideration because she has, by law, not that they care about that anymore, except when it applies to the small people, disqualified herself from ever holding public office. Now, I knew the general procedure that went into this, which is, I believe, pretty well known. The first thing they have to do is detect the launch, which we have the satellites up there that do that. That's monitored, 24/7. They confirm the launch. They notify the president. The president has that military attaché with him that has the nuclear codes. They open that up, and he decides the response, and that gets issued to the Pentagon, and those codes are then issued to the commanders. And how much time we have beforehand, at least in the old days, if Russia launched a missile from its territory, which has to go over the North Pole, that would take roughly a half hour to make it to the United States. When you have the submarines patrolling off the coast in the Atlantic, that cut the time down to, say, 10 to 15 minutes. So me sitting there as a captain in the basement of the Pentagon working on the nuclear planning system, I knew if we ever went to war, first off, I'd probably never even know it until the bomb went off. Because you had to go through that process of notifying. And then even if they made an announcement over the PA system at the Pentagon, what are you going to do? There's no bunker to go to. You can't, even make the parking lot and get in your car before it'd be too late. And even if you did, especially depending on what time of day it was, you might not even be able to make it through traffic to make it to a safe distance. And to let it be heard, worldwide, that it's going to take us 4 minutes before we can issue a response. Think about the advantage that gives our enemies if they can time some kind of event to try to prevent that communication or make it to where that time frame is less than 4 minutes. It is just the height of treason from my point of view.
And you're talking about if you knew right now that this was inbound and you had 15 minutes, seriously, do you think that if that announcement were made over the PA system in the Pentagon, realistically speaking, that it's, let's say the announcement takes 30 seconds to make the announcement, and that eats up half a minute of the 15 minutes. Do you think in 14 and a half minutes a person could get to his or her car in the parking lot, get out of the building, get to his or her car, and actually get to the exit of the parking lot in 14 and a half minutes? Is that possible?
I just don't see how, but first we have to look at reality.
That's what I'm talking about.
Once they've done that, would they even sound an alert for the population? Because again, we've done away with all the civil defense shelters that we used to have back in the 1960s.
And the air raid sirens.
And there's, unlike Russia, we've done no exercises with our population to get them to shelters, even if we had the shelters. So, it's like, what good would it even do to make the announcement? Just be surprised when the nuke goes off.
I'm thinking about how long it takes the average family. Let's say they want to go shopping, and let's say there's 4 or 5 people in the family, and they're going to go to the mall or wherever they're going to go on a Saturday. They say, okay, let's go to the mall. How long does it take from that point to the point where the key goes into the ignition and the engine is started for the departure to begin? I'll bet you it's a half an hour. By the time everybody goes to the bathroom, then everybody goes to the bathroom again. I'll bet you it's a half an hour. And I'm thinking about the Pentagon and the hallways there, and how is it possible that there wouldn't be mass panic, mass confusion, every man and woman for him or herself, pushing, shoving, it'd be chaos, don't you think?
And keep in mind, especially when you're not in a carpool, which most people are. I was not in a carpool because I was also working on my MBA at the time, and I had to be able to go to a nearby base where those classes were done at night. So the parking areas for people driving by themselves is way out in the parking lot. You don't even get there. I'd say even running, it's going to take you 5 minutes once you're outside the building and nobody's in your way.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm referring to, and plus the confusion in the hallways getting to outside, and then the confusion of, did you hear that? What did they say? What was that message? Is this a drill? Is this real? I mean, all of that, you have to add in all the time for all of that, those quick discussions, and then calling the family, and because obviously the family doesn't know, so people are going to stop and make those phone calls to their loved ones and say, hey, we're about to all die. Go in the basement or whatever the nearest safer location is. Wow, what a mess. What a mess. Really good point, John. So, class, maybe during this week you'll have a chance to meet with your family, have dinner, and talk about where you're going to go. What are you going to do should the tensions keep escalating and we get to the point where you've got to take shelter? Where are you going to go? Make sure you have a place and make sure it's stocked. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us, and Mike in Tennessee, welcome. You're on with Captain John Regan.
Greetings, John. Greetings, Vincent. I just wanted to reply. Last week you had spoke briefly about the need to spend more time on the farm, and the concern is it really making a difference? And I just want to point out that if you go to TalkStreamLive.com and you look at the ratings, you have untold thousands of people listening to you live right now, which is a clear indication that people want the information that you're providing. And this is a ministry need that needs to be continued, regardless if you're at the helm or if you have guest people filling in for you as need occurs. But definitely, this is a need. And as far as those people out there looking at what ifs, strategic planning, contingencies for all these things, I know today I listened to a fellow for an hour talking about how to bug out and run away from things, and I think that there comes a time where you have to really seriously consider standing your ground and taking a stand and preventing the never-ending cycle of running and retreating, which never ends well, because you can only have one safe haven effectively where you put all your resources for the long run. And if you keep putting things here, there, and yonder, they'll be found and they'll be taken. There was a guy that I talked to 10 years ago. They had the same problem we're dealing with corruption in government in Croatia. And he said the people were being basically taken out one by one. The Soviet Union, this is after the fall of communist Russia, but still the Soviets were running the gig and putting in their puppet sheriffs and judges. And the townsmen got together and they said, you know what, we've had enough. We're tired of our people ending up in prison and being killed and ripped off and so forth. And the next thing you knew, there was a couple of sheriff and judges found hanging from trees. Well, of course, the Soviet Union replied by sending more people to put in their rigged elections for their own puppet sheriffs and judges. And pretty soon they were found hanging from trees. And this went on for a while, and eventually they had a hard time finding people that were under the control of the Soviet Union willing to go down to this Croatian community and become sheriffs and judges. And so then the people took responsibility. They were independent, self-sufficient, and at that point, self-governing. And that's effectively how they solved their problem. Quietly, discreetly, and it seemed to work for them. You don't hear about it on the news. It's not really covered. It's kind of like the Iceland solution. You don't hear about this stuff, but you don't hear these people talking about running and hiding and doing a lot of, planning for leaving. They tend to want to stay where they live and provide for themselves and eliminate those predators that are wreaking havoc. Not that I am encouraging anybody to do anything illegally, mind you. I'm just talking about what this fellow shared as his solution in his country.
Mike, what about the Battle of Athens, Tennessee?
The same thing. The townsmen came home after the Second World War and found out a backwoods mafia took over, and they were running roughshod over the people. And the young men back from war, they ran for office, and when they discovered that the sheriff was stealing the ballot boxes and controlling the outcome of the election, they went and to the National Guard Armory, got the rifles, went to the sheriff's department and said, give up the ballot boxes. And the sheriff barricaded himself and called the governor and said, hey, send help. Well, the governor said, you got yourself in that mess, you get yourself out. And without anybody being killed, of course, they did put a few rounds to the front door of the sheriff's department and such, but that's just to get their attention that they meant business. And over the course of a few hours, the sheriff and his henchmen determined it's best for them to leave town in one piece as opposed to being carried out in a bunch of pieces, and they left the county. And the young men took over their county, and for a while, it's not the same now. Athens is totally backwoods mafia run today. But for a while, they lived in peace, and there was no mafia. The decision is up to you. Will you continue to live under a controlled backwoods mafia in your community?
Mike, do you have anything else?
God bless and have a great day, gentlemen. Oh, and other than that, John, if you can come up with a solution for a silver-backed currency and labor-backed currency, that's what we're going to need after this one falls.
Well said. Well said. Mike Parsons, thank you so much for calling in. We'll be right back. John Regan's with us. John, I'm looking at businessinsider.com. It says America's biggest banks are closing hundreds of branches. Bank of America, Citigroup, and J.P. Morgan shut 389 branches since the third quarter of last year. Bank of America, which had over 6,000 branches before the financial crisis, now has 4,629, according to third quarter accounts. The bank has cut 112 financial centers from last year. So all is not well in banking. And John, I'm seeing as I travel and as I try to engage in some kinds of commerce that I can now use my cell phone, if I had one, to pay for transactions. I'm seeing that more and more. Just, I use your cell phone and pay with your cell phone. So it's happening, and pretty soon it looks like cash is going to disappear from many, many locations. I don't like it because the anonymity of cash is something that I think is quite precious. Your thoughts?
Well, they may even still keep cash around, but once they implement the blockchain, the serial number of the bill will be blockchained and will be read and by a reader as you transfer ownership, either between people or between people in the store, and it's not going to be anonymous once that hits.
How are these politicians going to compensate their prostitutes for the services provided to the politicians, anonymously? I guess they're not going to be able to do it, are they?
Unless they've got some kind of back door into the system, which wouldn't surprise me. They're going to have the same problems. But as far as control on the little people, like I say, everything is going to be inventoried.
Mm-hmm. And Miles and I were talking this morning about through the Paris Agreement, they're really going to put the damper on internal combustion engines and cows. They're going to try their best to shut down cattle farming, and not many of us will survive. And as I mentioned during hour number one, I met a farmer who just gave up. He gave up. That's what he knows, and he was saying that he can't be a farmer without having a job to pay to be a farmer. You have to go to work so that you can go to work as a farmer and survive. And he's absolutely right. Farmers have to have other jobs in order to survive. So what's it going to be like without beef, class? Think about that. And I guess maybe beef will be a luxury, an extreme luxury that you may not see very, very often in the future, as a result of some of the best and brightest politicians that we have helping us. John, what's next in class today?
The link is titled The Anomaly. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, this came off of Yahoo News through the Associated Press. And it's just another indication of the links that Russia's getting ready for going to nuclear war with the United States. And what's happening is, I guess back up a little bit of background. Everybody today, knows about the global positioning system. You probably have it in your cell phone. You might even have a, TomTom or some similar device in your car. Tells you where to go. It used to be that this was military use only. In fact, back when I was at the Pentagon, that was the case. Now, I was not in the strategic nuclear planning side of things. I was in the theater nuclear planning side. So I don't have a lot of familiarity with the strategic side to begin with. And I don't know exactly how their guidance systems are built and what all they use. But you can be sure that GPS is a big part of that system for making sure a missile, whether it's a nuclear missile or a conventional missile, makes it to the target. Now, the satellites that put out the signal are in various positions in space. And because of the distance, that does make it possible to override those signals with a stronger signal once you get, in that, area of Earth that we live. So what's going on near the Kremlin is that people are finding out that their GPS systems are not working the way they're supposed to. This is whether it's, people using it for business purposes or tracking how long they, what kind of distance they run. If they go close to the Kremlin, that goes haywire. And in some cases, it's showing them to be at an airport that's 18 miles away from the Kremlin. And the report says that this comes and goes, so they don't have this turned on all the time, but it does mean that they're testing it. So just imagine if you've got inbound missiles that are using GPS, and when it acquires this new signal, instead of making it to the target, is following the signal to a place that's miles away from the target. Puts a kink in the war planning there.
As you say this, I was thinking about, where would they want to attack? John, based on what you've learned, would they want to strike the Midwest and say, now look, we just want to show you what it's going to be like. We can hit Washington, Chicago, L.A., New York, Boston, Dallas. But we just want to show you what, a small sample of what we can do is like. Or do you think they would just strike at the heart of the beast? What do you think? Do you have a feel for that?
Well, from what I've read, Russia really doesn't want to do a nuclear war because it's bad for everybody, including the so-called winner. Mm-hmm. But if they believe that war is inevitable, they will strike first and go all out. I don't know if they would try to do more of what we think are the traditional nuclear war, where they're actually trying to destroy the targets on the ground, or if they would just do the high-altitude bursts, create the EMP effect that would take down the power grid, and basically, neuter the entire country. And at that point, they don't even have to worry about invading. I kind of hope that they would at least send teams in to take control of the nuclear reactors, because we've covered this with Matt Stein before. Once that diesel fuel runs out for the generators, then those reactors will go critical, and you've got that fallout to deal with. And I would hope that they would invade those sites and keep those generators going, shut down the reactors. And, of course, that whole process is going to take more than a year to cool down the rods, not only in the reactor, but the spent fuel pools as well. Mm-hmm. So, that's my take. Is if they're going to attack, it's going to be to take everything out, not just a show of force.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why people that I talk to don't have a positive outlook toward our future. And John, I keep reading stories about young people. The dream is over. The dream about getting that great job and rising through the organization and becoming starting at the bottom and working your way up and actually becoming part of management and staying with that company and having that house in the suburbs. It's over. And young people looking ahead don't see that American dream anymore. It's over, absolutely over. Do you see the same thing, John?
Oh, shoot, it's already over for me. My education has essentially done nothing. My master's degrees have not earned me one interview, much less a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. My master's degree did get me into the door for an interview because they had as a minimum qualification, this was back in the 70s, they had a minimum qualification of having a master's degree in business for this one particular job that I had. Other than that, it hasn't done much for me, other than prove that I had the stamina to do it. Other than that, you know what I mean, John? I'm talking about going to work during the day, going to school full-time at night, with a full-time job during the day. Other than proving that I had the stamina, I don't know how much else it did. I learned a few facts. I learned a little bit more how to think. But other than that, it was pretty expensive for what it, from what I benefited from it. Same thing as you, right?
And I didn't get my MBA until 87, and by then, things have already started changing in America.
Yeah, mine was from 1978. I don't know if I mentioned this, but in order to graduate with a master's degree in business, you had to have a 3.0 grade point average. And I decided that it was a 5-year program. And I decided that I could probably bang this out in a year and a half if I just go to school full time at night. And I knew my grades would suffer. So I graduated with a 3.0000. the absolute minimum that you could graduate with. But I was going for speed, and I wanted to bang this thing out because it was having exams over your head, and then at night, and then having the boss over your head in the morning was something that I wanted to get over quickly. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us. John, Sam in St. Louis is calling in. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I'd like to take a shot at this whole EMP discussion. Every once in a while you hear it on the news, and it really makes a splash for a couple weeks or something, and people go ape about it. And it's, after all my years of research in this, there's not very many people, nation states, aggressor states, that are going to attack the United States with an EMP because they don't want to commit suicide. John's right about all the information he's been reading about the active nuclear power plants, as well as the on-site fuel cores that are still in the coolant pools. They're not going to do that because we're going to have a bunch of Fukushimas all over the United States that's going to poison the entire northern hemisphere. The only people that will actively seek Armageddon, and it is a radical, demented religious group, and that is those people that want to bring back the 12th Mahdi for the apocalypse. Now, this is widely known, well known, that is basically what they want to say. Sometimes that North Koreans are crazy enough to do that, or Iranians don't want to have anything to do with this kind of stuff. They want to go about their business and do what they do. But there are sects within most Islamic nations that do want to bring about the 12th Mahdi through the apocalypse. And EMP is one way to go about doing that. What else? The Crescent Carney from the Oak Ridge National Laboratories put out an excellent book called Nuclear War Survival Skills. And you can get that on, ki4u.com. And that is Shayne Connor's website. He has a bunch of really easily to understand information on the actual good news about nuclear destruction, what to do if a nuclear disaster is imminent, when an ill wind blows from afar, like from Japan, Fukushima nuclear crisis. All this really easily to read and free information that you can get on his website. That's KI Kilo India, the number 4 U uniform.com. Some great information, and you can also find Nuclear War Survival Skills, the book by Crescent Kearney, which has a foreword by Dr. Edward Teller, the inventor, the person who developed the hydrogen bomb, in it. And it's just excellent books. Not all Americans are targeted for nuclear war. The Pentagon, obviously. Most war material factories within the United States, obviously. Military bases, sure. But, Springfield, Missouri, St. Charles, yeah, because they have, the Harm and Harpoon, the Slam factories, but, little places like Mascoutah, Illinois, okay, it's south of Scott Air Force Base, and they have some command headquarters there, the old former MAC, Airlift Transportation Command and whatnot. But little towns aren't going to be. So a lot of this old 1950s, 60s, and 70s, duck and cover stuff is meant for people that are outside the blast zone, but are still going to be affected by the destructive blast force winds. Basically like a tornado. Okay, and then you have a certain amount of time, depending on how close you are to the blast, to really take cover before that nuclear winter starts setting in and you get fallout. Anyway, was that clear as mud, or?
Well, you mentioned Ki4U. I wonder if that's potassium iodide for you. I wonder if that's what they meant by that. I'm doing a post right now to that website as
either
you mentioned.
Iodide or iodate.
Yeah, one of those two, right?
I forgot. It's been so long since I've got all this stuff in my head that I've forgotten most of it, so I don't.
I've talked to those guys at that website, and they've got interesting materials, and they will calibrate survey meters, radiation survey meters from the civil defense era. I'm talking about the 50s and the 60s, right?
Yeah, he bought the whole entire schmear, the kit and caboodle from equipment from the U.S. Army, and started.
Not all of it. Craig Douglas, one of our instructors, has a lot of it as well. But yeah, and I should give him a call and get him on the air. Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah, that's Shayne Connor, definitely.
Okay, do you have contact information?
I just have his website. I haven't been in contact with him for 5 years.
I'll do what I can. Hey, okay. Sam, thanks so much for calling in. John Regan, thank you so much for being with us today.